My daughter Emma came home crying, saying her online boyfriend Jake had suddenly started asking for money and making threats. When I saw the messages, every maternal instinct screamed danger. The digital forensics expert I hired traced Jake's accounts back to Linda Morrison, the woman who'd been at our dinner table dozens of times, studying my daughter like prey. Before I dive into this story that destroyed two families forever, let me know where you're watching from in the comments below. Hit that like button if you've ever had to protect your children from people you trusted, and subscribe to True Revenge for more stories of maternal justice served cold. My name is Sarah, I'm 38 years old, and I thought I knew what betrayal felt like until I discovered that my sister's best friend had been systematically grooming my teenage daughter for 8 months. What started as a mother's concern about online dating became a criminal investigation that exposed a predator who had been hiding in plain sight. Emma is my only child, and at 16, she's everything to me. Smart, funny, and unfortunately, like most teenagers, completely trusting when it comes to online relationships. She'd been homeschooled until high school due to my work schedule as a nurse, which meant she was perhaps more naive about social dynamics than her peers. 6 months ago, Emma started mentioning a boy named Jake she'd met in an online gaming community. First, I was relieved she was making friends. As a single mother working long shifts at the hospital, I worried about her spending too much time alone. "Jake really gets me, Mom," Emma would say, her face lighting up as she checked her phone. "He's so mature for his age. He understands things that other kids at school just don't." Jake was supposedly 17, a senior at a private school in the next state. According to Emma, he was into the same indie music she loved, shared her passion for photography, and was planning to study pre-med like she wanted to. He seemed almost too perfect, but I chalked it up to the idealism of teenage romance. My sister Rebecca and her best friend Linda Morrison were frequent visitors to our house. Rebecca lived 20 minutes away and worked as a real estate agent, while Linda was recently divorced and worked in IT support. Linda had been part of our family gatherings for over 5 years, ever since she and Rebecca became close friends at their yoga studio. Linda was quiet, observant, and always seemed particularly interested in Emma's activities. She'd ask detailed questions about Emma's school schedule, her favorite restaurants, and even her clothing sizes when birthdays came around. I thought she was just being thoughtful. "Emma's growing up so fast," Linda would comment, watching my daughter with an intensity that I now realize was predatory. "She's going to break hearts someday. Does she have any boyfriends yet?" When I mentioned Emma's online relationship with Jake, Linda seemed fascinated. "Online relationships can be so dangerous," she said, though her tone was curious rather than concerned. "Kids these days share way too much personal information. Has she video chatted with this boy? How does she know he's really who he says he is?" I explained that Jake claimed his camera was broken and that they mostly communicated through text messages and voice calls. Linda nodded knowingly. Smart boy, keeping some mystery alive. Though I hope Emma's being careful about what photos she shares. Her comments made me slightly uncomfortable, but I dismissed the feeling. Linda worked in tech support, of course she'd be aware of online safety issues. Over the following months, Emma became increasingly attached to Jake. She'd wake up early to text him before school, rush home to video call him, and spend hours telling me about their conversations. Her grades remained excellent, and she seemed happy, so I tried not to interfere too much with her first serious relationship. The red flags started appearing about 3 weeks ago. Emma came home from school upset, explaining that Jake had been asking more personal questions lately. He wanted to know our address, where I worked, and what car I drove. When she hesitated to share these details, he'd gotten moody and accusatory. "He says if I really trusted him, I'd tell him everything," Emma said, tears in her eyes. "But you always taught me not to give out personal information online." I was proud that my safety lessons had stuck, but concerned about Jake's pressure tactics. "You're absolutely right to keep that information private," I assured her. "If Jake really cares about you, he'll respect your boundaries." 2 days later, Emma showed me messages where Jake was asking for photos. Not necessarily inappropriate ones, but increasingly specific requests. Photos of her in her school uniform, photos of her bedroom, photos of her with friends. When she'd sent casual selfies, he'd ask for more revealing angles or for her to wear specific outfits. I feel weird about some of his requests, Emma admitted. But he says couples should share everything. That night, I couldn't sleep. Something about the escalation felt calculated, predatory. I decided to do some research on Jake myself. Emma had mentioned his full name was Jake Stevens, that he attended Riverside Preparatory Academy. But when I looked up the school's website and student directories, no Jake Stevens appeared anywhere. I tried social media searches, finding several Jake Stevens in our state, but none matched the age or details Emma had described. When I expressed my concerns to Emma, she became defensive. Just because you can't find him online doesn't mean he's lying, she argued. Maybe his parents are strict about social media. Maybe he uses privacy settings you don't understand. She had a point about privacy settings, but my maternal instincts were screaming that something was wrong. I decided to take a more direct approach. Why don't you ask Jake to video call with both of us? I suggested. I'd love to meet the boy who's captured my daughter's heart. Emma's face fell. He's really shy about meeting parents. His own relationship with his family is complicated. Every excuse Jake provided seemed designed to avoid verification of his identity. No video calls because his camera was broken. No meeting in person because his parents were strict. No social media presence because he valued privacy. Each explanation was plausible individually, but together they formed a pattern of evasion. The situation escalated dramatically 2 weeks ago. Emma came home from school in tears, holding her phone like it contained a bomb. Jake's been asking me for money, she sobbed. He says his family is having financial problems and he needs help. But when I said I didn't have access to that kind of cash, he got really angry. She showed me the messages and my blood ran cold. Jake's tone had shifted from romantic and understanding to manipulative and threatening. If you really loved me, you'd find a way to help, one message read. I've shared so much with you, been so vulnerable. I thought I could trust you, but maybe I was wrong about what kind of person you are. Another message was more direct. I have screenshots of all our conversations, including photos you've sent. It would be really unfortunate if these got shared with people at your school. My daughter had been manipulated into sending compromising photos, and now Jake was using them as leverage. This had escalated from an inappropriate online relationship to criminal extortion. Emma, honey, this isn't love, I said gently, holding her while she cried. This is someone who has been manipulating you from the beginning. We need to report this to the police. But Mom, what if he really does share those photos? What if everyone at school sees them? We'll handle that when we come to it, I promised. But right now, we need to stop this person from hurting you or other girls. That night, after Emma finally fell asleep, I made my first call to Detective Maria Santos with the Cybercrimes Division. Maria listened carefully as I explained the situation, taking notes about the timeline and Jake's escalating behavior. This follows a classic pattern of online predation, she explained. Long grooming period, building trust and emotional dependence, then escalating to requests for photos and money. The threats about sharing intimate images constitute sexual extortion, which is a federal crime. What's our next step? We need to preserve all communication records and avoid alerting the perpetrator that we're investigating. Can you get Emma's phone and show me the message history? The next morning, I sat down with Emma and explained that we needed to cooperate fully with the police investigation. Despite her embarrassment and fear, she agreed to turn over her phone and provide detailed statements about her relationship with Jake. Detective Santos began working with a digital forensics specialist to trace Jake's accounts and IP addresses. What they found was disturbing. Jake's profiles had been created using sophisticated identity theft. The photos he'd shared with Emma had been stolen from social media accounts belonging to a real teenager in California who had no idea his images were being used. The phone number Jake used was routed through multiple proxy services, making it difficult to trace immediately. However, the forensics team discovered something crucial. Several of Jake's messages had been sent from IP addresses registered to local internet service providers. More specifically, there were multiple messages sent from an IP address registered to a residential account just 15 miles from our house. "We're getting closer," Detective Santos assured me. "Whoever is doing this lives in the area and has been sloppy about covering their digital tracks." While the police investigation continued, I decided to conduct my own research. I started paying closer attention to the people in Emma's orbit, anyone who would have had access to detailed information about her daily routine, her interests, and her vulnerabilities. The breakthrough came during a family dinner at Rebecca's house 3 days ago. Linda was there as usual, and the conversation naturally turned to Emma's situation. I mentioned, without giving specific details, that Emma had been targeted by an online predator. "That's terrifying," Linda said, her eyes bright with what I initially mistook for concern. "How did this person know so much about Emma?" "They must have been watching your family for a while." Something about her phrasing bothered me. She'd automatically assumed the predator knew details about our family, though I hadn't mentioned anything about the level of personal information Jake had possessed. Later, as Rebecca and I cleaned dishes, Linda excused herself to use the bathroom. She was gone for nearly 20 minutes, which seemed odd. When she returned, she made an offhand comment about needing to respond to some urgent work emails. That night, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. On impulse, I called Detective Santos and shared my concerns about Linda's behavior. "It's worth investigating," she agreed. "Can you get me her full name and address?" The next morning, Detective Santos called with news that made my stomach drop. "We traced several of Jake's messages to an IP address registered to Linda Morrison at 847 Pine Street," she said. "We need you to stay calm and not alert her in any way. We're preparing search and arrest warrants now." Linda, my sister's best friend. The woman who had sat at our dinner table dozens of times, asking detailed questions about Emma's life. The woman who had watched my daughter grow up, studying her like prey. I felt physically sick. How many times had Linda been in our house, observing Emma, gathering information for her fake persona? How many family conversations had she twisted into ammunition for her manipulation? "There's more," Detective Santos continued. "We found evidence that Linda has done this before. We've identified at least 3 other teenage girls in neighboring counties who were targeted by similar fake profiles. We believe Linda has been operating for at least 2 years. The full scope of Linda's predatory behavior was still being uncovered, but it was clear that Emma wasn't her first victim. Linda had been systematically targeting teenage girls through online communities, using stolen identities to build elaborate fake relationships. I had to tell Emma the truth before she heard it from someone else. "Honey, the police found out who Jake really is," I said, sitting beside her on her bed. "It's going to be hard to hear." Emma braced herself. "Is he much older than he said?" "Jake isn't a teenage boy at all. Jake is Linda Morrison." Color drained from Emma's face. "Aunt Rebecca's friend Linda?" "That's impossible. Linda has been pretending to be Jake this entire time. She's been targeting teenage girls online, and you weren't her first victim." Emma stared at me in shock. "But she was here when I was talking to Jake. How could she be in 2 places at once?" I walked her through how it would have worked. Linda could easily send messages while sitting at our dinner table, excusing herself to use the bathroom when she needed to make voice calls or respond to more complex messages. She'd had access to our house, our routines, and Emma's personal information for years. Every time she asked about your school schedule, your friends, your interests, she was gathering information for Jake's persona, I explained. She knew exactly what kind of boy would appeal to you because she'd been watching you grow up. Emma broke down crying, not just from the betrayal, but from the violation of having been studied and manipulated by someone we trusted. The arrest happened the following afternoon. Detective Santos called to inform me that Linda had been taken into custody at her workplace. When police executed the search warrant on her apartment, they found extensive evidence of her criminal activity. Linda's computer contained detailed files on multiple teenage victims, including Emma. She'd created profiles for each girl, noting their interests, insecurities, and family situations. She'd crafted different fake personas to match what each girl was looking for in a relationship. She kept trophies, Detective Santos explained. Screenshots of conversations, saved photos the girls had sent, even printed copies of some messages. It's clear this was compulsive behavior that had been escalating over time. The evidence also revealed Linda's escalation pattern. She would spend months building emotional dependence in her victims, then gradually introduce requests for photos. Once she had compromising images, she would begin asking for money or gifts, using emotional manipulation first, then moving to blackmail if the victims hesitated. In Emma's case, Linda had been preparing to demand that Emma meet Jake in person. Given the pattern with other victims, Detective Santos believed Linda was planning to physically assault Emma during this meeting. The full investigation revealed that Linda had targeted at least 6 teenage girls over 2 years. Emma was fortunate that her mother's intervention had stopped the progression before it reached its most dangerous phase. I had to face Rebecca and tell her that her best friend was a predator. Rebecca initially refused to believe it, insisting there had been some mistake. But as the evidence mounted and Linda's other victims came forward, Rebecca was forced to confront the reality that she'd been friends with someone who had been systematically abusing children. "I feel so stupid," Rebecca cried during one of our conversations. "How did I not see it? How did I not know? She fooled all of us," I assured her. Predators are skilled at maintaining normal facades while hiding their crimes. Rebecca's relationship with Linda hadn't just been friendship. Linda had been her emotional support system during Rebecca's divorce 2 years earlier. The betrayal was devastating for my sister, though nothing compared to what Emma had endured. The legal proceedings moved quickly. Linda was charged with multiple federal crimes, including sexual exploitation of minors, extortion, identity theft, and cyberstalking. Faced with overwhelming evidence, her attorney advised her to accept a plea deal. Linda was sentenced to 8 years in federal prison, followed by 10 years of supervised probation. She was also required to register as a sex offender and was permanently banned from accessing social media platforms or unsupervised internet use. During the sentencing hearing, I was allowed to provide a victim impact statement. Linda Morrison violated the trust of our family and used that access to prey on my teenage daughter, I read from my prepared statement. She didn't just target Emma randomly. She studied her for years, learning her vulnerabilities and interests so she could craft the perfect manipulation. The damage goes beyond what happened online. Emma now questions her judgment about relationships and struggles to trust new people. She's in therapy dealing with the psychological impact of being groomed by someone she viewed as family. Linda showed no remorse during sentencing, maintaining through her attorney that her relationships with the girls had been misunderstood and that she had never intended physical harm. The judge rejected this characterization entirely. The defendant engaged in systematic predatory behavior, targeting vulnerable minors through elaborate deception, Judge Harrison stated during sentencing. The level of planning and manipulation demonstrated in this case represents a serious threat to public safety. Emma's healing process has been gradual but steady. She's working with a therapist who specializes in online exploitation trauma, learning to separate Linda's manipulation from genuine relationship dynamics. "I keep thinking about all the times Linda was at our house," Emma said during one of our therapy sessions. "Was she studying me the whole time? Was everything fake? Linda's interest in you was real, but it was predatory rather than caring," her therapist explained. "She saw you as a target, not as a person deserving of respect and protection." One positive outcome has been Emma's decision to become involved in online safety education. She now speaks at local schools about her experience, helping other teenagers recognize warning signs of predatory behavior. If my experience can prevent even one other girl from going through this, then something good will have come from it, Emma told me after her first school presentation. The ripple effects of Linda's crimes extended throughout our extended family. Several relatives questioned whether they could have done more to protect Emma, while others wondered if they had unknowingly enabled Linda's access to children through family gatherings. My relationship with Rebecca required rebuilding. While I never blamed her for Linda's crimes, there was an inevitable strain from the association. We've worked through it with family counseling, but our dynamic has changed permanently. I brought a predator into Emma's life, Rebecca said during one particularly difficult session. I vouched for Linda, invited her to family events, and gave her access to Emma. How do I live with that guilt? You couldn't have known, I assured her. Linda was skilled at deception. She fooled law enforcement, mental health professionals, and an entire community. You're a victim of her manipulation, too. 6 months after Linda's sentencing, Emma received an unexpected letter in the mail. It was from Chloe, one of Linda's other victims, who had learned about Emma through the court proceedings. I wanted to thank you for being brave enough to report Linda, Chloe wrote. I was too scared to tell anyone what happened to me, but when I heard about your case, it gave me the courage to come forward too. Chloe's letter revealed that there were more victims than law enforcement had initially discovered. Linda had been operating across multiple states, using different personas to target girls in various online communities. Emma and I decided to connect with other survivors, forming a support network for teenagers who had been victimized by online predators. The group meets monthly and has become an important part of Emma's healing process. Talking to other girls who went through similar experiences helps me feel less alone, Emma explained. And helping newer members of the group gives me a sense of purpose. Today, 2 years after Linda's arrest, Emma is thriving. She's a senior in high school, planning to study cybersecurity in college with a focus on protecting children online. She's in a healthy relationship with a boy she met through legitimate school activities, and she's learned to trust her instincts about people and situations. I'm proud of Emma's resilience and inspired by her decision to transform her trauma into advocacy. But I'm also changed by this experience. I'm more vigilant about the people I allow into our lives, more aware of how predators operate, and more determined to protect other families from similar violations. The investigation revealed that Linda had been planning her approach to Emma for over a year before creating the Jake persona. She'd studied our family dynamics, Emma's personality, and her interests to craft the perfect manipulation. The level of premeditation was chilling. Linda is currently serving her sentence at a federal facility. According to the terms of her plea agreement, she's required to participate in psychological treatment for her offending behavior. Whether she'll actually change remains to be seen. What I learned from this nightmare is that predators often hide in plain sight. They're not strangers lurking in dark corners of the internet, they're people we know, trust, and invite into our lives. They use our trust against us, studying our children to better exploit them. The warning signs of online predation include excessive interest in a child's online activities, requests for personal information that seem inappropriate, and attempts to isolate children from their support systems. But the most important lesson is that parental instincts matter. When something feels wrong, investigate further. I'm sharing this story not for sympathy, but to warn other parents about the reality of online predation. Emma's case was unusual because her abuser was someone we knew personally, but the grooming tactics Linda used are standard among online predators. Trust your instincts. Verify your children's online relationships. And never assume that someone you know personally couldn't be capable of this level of deception and harm. If you found this story helpful, please like and subscribe to help other parents stay informed about online safety threats. Share your own experiences or concerns in the comments below, and remember that protection starts with awareness. Thank you for listening to our story, and remember that the people who seem most trustworthy are sometimes the ones we need to watch most carefully.